Okay, quick welcome. This is an original Tales First story, and the way it played out caught me off guard. Let's get into it.
I came home after a double shift at the hospital, and my 7-year-old daughter was missing. My mom said, "We voted. You don't get a say." My sister was already stripping my daughter's room like it was a takeover. I stayed calm and said this. My parents and sister went pale. At 11:03 a.m., I stood on the front step in my work shoes, keys still in my hand, and listened. Not for anything dramatic. For my daughter, Cora. A cartoon theme song, Little Feet, a random mom from down the hall. Instead, I heard activity, voices, laughter. The kind of bright, busy energy that usually only shows up in this house when someone is about to ask me for something. My body was begging for sleep. My head was still full of fluorescent lights and beeping monitors. I'd been on my feet so long my bones felt like they'd been rented out. But I'd been looking forward to this day anyway. 2 hours of sleep, maybe 3 if I got lucky. Then the whole afternoon with Cora, bedtime together. Then I'd crash properly. That was the plan. I stepped inside, and my instincts immediately went wrong. The house smelled like coffee and syrup, and I could hear my mom's bright voice, the one she uses when she's trying to sell you on something. Then I saw my sister Allison in the hallway, in socks, hauling flattened boxes. A ring light box was propped against the wall, already opened. She looked up, smiled without showing her teeth, and said, "Oh, you're home," like I was interrupting. I didn't smile back. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask why there were boxes in the hallway. I just walked past her, straight to Cora's room, because I'm a mother, not a tourist. I pushed the door open and stopped so fast my shoulder hit the frame. The room looked like it had been hit by a polite tornado. Cora's bed was stripped down to the mattress. Her blanket, the one she refuses to sleep without, was folded and shoved into a laundry basket like it was an inconvenience. Her stuffed bunny was sitting upright on the dresser, turned toward the wall. The rug was rolled halfway up, and the walls were bare in patches, where her drawings and little posters used to be. There was painter's tape stuck to the baseboards. A measuring tape stretched across the floor, and on the desk sat a stack of printed photos, inspo, all beige and white and aggressively adult. This wasn't cleaning. This was repurposing. This was, your child doesn't live here anymore, so her room is available. My throat tightened. I turned in a slow circle like maybe she was hiding behind something. "Cora?" I called, softly at first. Nothing. I stepped farther into the room. The closet door was open. Her backpack was gone. My hands went cold. I turned back into the hallway. Allison was leaning against the wall. "Where is she?" I asked. Allison blinked at me, all innocence. "Where's who?" My voice stayed even. "Where is my daughter?" Before Allison could answer, my mom's voice floated from the kitchen. "Oh, honey," she called, like she was about to offer me a plate of pancakes. "Come in here." I didn't move. "Where is Cora?" Footsteps. Then my mom appeared at the end of the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel like she was in a commercial. My dad stood behind her. Allison shifted beside me, suddenly very interested in her nails. I repeated myself. "Where is Cora?" My mom smiled, tight and bright. "We voted." I stared at her. "We... what?" She lifted her chin. "We voted. You don't get a say." I felt the world go quiet, like someone turned down the volume on everything except my heartbeat. "You voted," I repeated slowly, because my brain refused to accept it at normal speed. "About what?" My dad crossed his arms. "It's been discussed." "It's been..." I let out a short, breathless laugh that didn't contain any humor. "You held a vote. About my child." My mom's expression hardened. "You're never here, Hannah." You work all the time. I work, I said, because bills don't care about feelings. Now, where is she? Allison chimed in, casual as a weather report. She's with her dad. The air in my chest vanished. With Stephen, I said, and it came out flat. My mom nodded like she'd just solved a math problem. Where she's supposed to be. My hands tingled. My 7-year-old barely knows him. He's still her father, my dad said. Biologically, I said, and my voice stayed calm in that dangerous way, calm like I was holding something heavy and trying not to drop it. My mom sighed like I was exhausting her. We had to make a decision. You don't have the outside perspective. You're too close to it. I'm her mother, I said. That's the perspective. Allison stepped forward, pointing down the hallway like a real estate agent. And besides, we need that room. I stared at her. You need Cora's room. Allison didn't even flinch. I work from home now. I need an office, a studio. You can't film content with a child running around. I looked from her to my mom. You're turning her room into a studio. My mom said, we can't have a child here in the house. It's disturbing. Disturbing. My daughter. Existing. My dad added, and you can't take care of her. You're always at work. So why are you acting shocked? I felt something cold and clear settle into place inside me. Not anger yet. Something sharper. I took a slow breath. Then I turned away and walked to the bathroom. Not because I was running, because if I stayed in that hallway, I was going to say something that would set the whole house on fire, and I needed the fire later, when it would matter. I locked the door. I stared at myself in the mirror. Work-worn face, tired eyes, the look of a woman who has spent years trying to be reasonable with unreasonable people. I put both hands on the sink and breathed. In, out. In, out. Then I unlocked the door and stepped back into the hallway. They were still talking, still justifying, still acting like they were the committee in charge of my life. I walked toward them, calm, steady, different. I stayed calm and said one sentence. They all stopped, and the color drained from their faces. They stared at me like they'd never seen me before, which was funny, in a dry kind of way, because they'd spent my whole life training me to be the version of me that wouldn't scare them, the one who didn't push back, the one who took whatever was handed to her and called it family. But the woman standing in that hallway, she wasn't asking for permission anymore. And watching their faces shift, subtle, then sharper, pulled me backward through time. Because this didn't start today. It started when I was a kid. My sister Allison is 2 years younger than me. 2 years is nothing now. But in our house, it was a crown. Allison was the favorite. Not in the obvious way where parents say it out loud. They did it the quiet way, the way that lets them deny it later. Allison got praised for being special. I got praised for being helpful. Allison was creative. I was responsible. If Allison cried, my mom moved like an emergency alarm went off. If I cried, my dad would say, "You're fine." So I learned how to be fine. I learned how to be useful. I learned how to anticipate what they wanted before they said it. Because if you're useful, you get tolerated. And even when I was little, I could feel it. The way they wanted me, not gone exactly, but out of the way. Fast forward to adulthood. I became a nurse because nursing makes sense. There's a problem, you address it. Someone is hurt, you help. You don't vote on whether they deserve care. Then I met Stephen. He was charming in the way people are charming when they know how to be. Funny, easy, the kind of person who made you relax your guard. I got pregnant. Stephen went quiet. Then he said, flat and clear, I don't want kids. Like he was picking a side dish. I was young enough to think love could fix it. old enough to know I wasn't ending my pregnancy because a man wanted to stay comfortably irresponsible. So I had Cora. Stephen held her once, briefly, awkwardly, like she was fragile and unfamiliar. After that, he faded. He didn't show up for the hard parts. He didn't show up for the normal parts either. He'd appear a few times a year, say something like, "Hey kiddo," take a photo like proof of life, and disappear again. We never went to court. Not because I didn't believe in paperwork, because Stephen didn't believe in parenting. And you can't negotiate custody with someone who treats involvement like an optional subscription. So Cora lived with me. When she was about 5, I had a job that technically worked. Not glamorous, not impressive. But it fit. Part-time hours, predictable shifts, the kind of schedule that lets a single mom do daycare pickup without sprinting through a parking lot like she's in a crime show. Money was tighter, sure, but Cora was safe. I was present. I could breathe. And then I got offered the position nurses actually want. Better pay. Real career traction. The kind of step up you don't get twice. The catch was the schedule. Brutal hours, sometimes doubles. The kind of job that looks great on paper and destroys your life in practice if you don't have support. My first instinct was to say no. I mentioned it casually to my parents, more like I was thinking out loud than asking for anything. And that's when they did a sudden emotional U-turn so fast it should have come with warning lights. Because before that, they weren't warm with Cora. Not openly cruel. Nothing you could point at and call out. Just distant. Like she was a guest's child who might spill juice. They also didn't care about my career. Not really. So when my mom suddenly said, "You have to take it," I actually thought I'd misheard. "You can move in here," she said, breathless with enthusiasm. "We'll help. We're retired. We can do childcare. You can't pass this up." My dad nodded. Allison, still living at home as an adult, said, "It's a one-time opportunity. You'd be stupid not to." It was suspicious. And then the reason finally surfaced. They were about to lose the house. My childhood home. The place they treated like a throne. They were drowning in debt. About $68,000 in unsecured debt. And they were roughly $19,400 behind on the mortgage and taxes. Their credit was wrecked. They couldn't refinance, they couldn't borrow, they couldn't fix it. And my stable, better-paying job, that was their lifeline. They sat me down like they were pitching a plan. "We need you to sign some things," my mom said. "What things?" I asked, already feeling my skin prickle. "A loan," my dad said. "In your name." My stomach dropped. "No!" "It's temporary," my mom said quickly. "We'll pay you back." Allison smiled like she was sharing a genius trick. "Your credit is good. Ours is not." And then came the part they tried to toss out like a minor detail. "The house would need to be transferred into your name," my mom said, too fast. "Just for the paperwork. It's just a formality." A formality. They wanted me to take on the liability, carry the debt, risk my future, and they still expected to keep the power. I didn't like it. I didn't trust it. But I also couldn't watch them lose the house. And this is the part that still makes me angry at myself. I wanted to believe they meant the rest of it. The childcare, the "we love having Cora here," the sudden enthusiasm. So I said yes. I put in about $24,000 of my savings up front. I took on a monthly house payment of about $2,350 in my name. I signed what they put in front of me. The house was transferred into my name, and they called it a formality. At first the deal held. They did childcare. I worked. Cora adjusted. Then the paperwork cleared. The house was safe. The crisis was over, and it was like the deal vanished. Suddenly, I was dumping my child on them. Suddenly, my job was a bad choice. Suddenly, I was never here, like they hadn't insisted I take the schedule. Allison started complaining the most. About noise, about space, about needing a home office and a studio, about content. And Cora became the problem. Too loud, too present, too inconvenient. My parents backed Allison the way they always had. Then the comments started. Well, there is a dad. Why isn't she with him more? You can't rely on us forever. I didn't take it seriously because Stephen wasn't a father in any way that mattered, and because I never believed my parents would actually do what they were hinting at. I thought it was control, pressure, threats, until I came home at 11:03 a.m. after a double shift, and Cora's room was being dismantled like she'd never existed there. And my mom said, "We voted." And in that hallway, watching their faces tighten, I realized the talking had turned into action. I looked at them, calm, steady, and I opened my mouth. "I want you out of my house within 30 days, I said quietly. "All of you." The hallway went so still I could hear the fridge hum. My mom blinked at me like I'd just announced I was moving to the moon. My dad's mouth opened once and closed again. Allison's confident little smile shattered. "What do you mean?" my mom snapped. "What are you talking about?" my dad added, louder, like volume could rewrite reality. I didn't answer. I didn't argue. I walked to my room because there's a certain kind of power in not explaining yourself to people who have never explained themselves to you. Behind me, they kept talking. Their voices followed like gnats. "That's not your house," my mom said from the hallway. "That's ours." "Don't speak to your parents like that," my dad barked. "We made the difficult decision for you," my mom added. "You should have made it years ago." Allison's voice cut in, sharp with panic. "It's the right thing to do." I kept moving. I took off my work shoes, grabbed my bag, my phone, my keys. Then I pulled open the bottom drawer of my dresser and took out the folder I'd been avoiding for years, the one with the paperwork, the one that proved what was just a formality. I slid it into my bag without looking at it too long, because if I did, I'd remember every moment I'd swallowed my doubts to save them. I walked back out. They were waiting, watching me like I was suddenly dangerous. "I will send you legal papers shortly," I said. "I want you out of this house." My mom froze in a way that wasn't performative this time. My dad snapped, "You can't do that." Allison turned to him, voice pitching up. "Can she do that? What does she mean?" I didn't answer. I walked out the front door. No yelling, no scene, no dramatic monologue. Just a clean exit. And behind me, I heard the scramble. The sudden shift from smug certainty to panicked calculation. In the car, my hands were steady on the wheel. My heart wasn't. I called Stephen. No answer. Again. Voicemail. Of course, I drove anyway, because sitting still would have turned into spiraling, and spiraling doesn't get your kid back. Why didn't he call me? Why wasn't he answering? Why did my parents feel comfortable delivering my child like a package? I called again. Nothing. So I did the next thing. I called his mother. Susan picked up on the first ring. Her voice was cold, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Hannah," she said. "Do you know where Cora is?" I asked, and I heard the crack in my own voice. "My parents said she's with Stephen, but he isn't answering. Is she okay?" "She will stay with us," Susan said, flat and final. "And you are not getting her back." I blinked. "What?" "She's fine," Susan said. "But you are not getting her back." Then she hung up. No warning, no explanation. Just a click, like she'd closed a file. I stared at my phone for half a second like it might change its mind. It didn't. I turned the car around so fast my tires chirped. I drove to Susan and David's house with my jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. When I got there, I knocked like I was trying to knock the lie out of the door. Susan opened the door a few inches. Not welcoming inches. The kind that say, "I can shut this the second you give me a reason." I didn't bother with hello. "Where's Cora?" Susan's eyes moved over me, scrubs, messy hair, the look of someone running on fumes, and she didn't soften. If anything, she looked more certain. "She's here," she said. Relief hit fast. Then she added, flat as a slammed file, "And you're not getting her back." My stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" "Your parents brought her," Susan said. "They said you knew." "I didn't," I said. "I came home, and she was gone." Susan's gaze didn't move. "They said you wanted her with Stephen." A short, humorless breath escaped me. "Stephen won't even answer his phone." That did something. Not kindness, just a flicker, like the name was an old bruise. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. Her husband David appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, face unreadable. He didn't step closer. He just watched, like he was measuring the situation and deciding what it was worth. "Is she okay?" I asked, and I hated how careful my voice sounded. Susan didn't hesitate. "She's safe." "Let me see her." Susan's hand stayed on the door. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I forced it down. Nurse mode. Controlled. Clear. "I'm not here to debate," I said. "I'm here for my daughter." Susan's eyes narrowed slightly. "You should have come with her." "I didn't send her," I said. "My parents did. Behind my back." Silence. Not peace. Calculation. David's gaze shifted, subtle, like he was checking if my story held weight. Susan's voice stayed cold. "People say anything when they want something." "Then don't take my word for it," I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up, screen facing her. One glance was enough. Missed calls to Stephen stacked like a ladder, the call to Susan, the timestamp. "I called him." "No answer." "I called you." "You hung up." Susan didn't look at the phone for long, but David did. Just a flick. Like he couldn't help himself. I kept my voice low. "Ask Cora what she was told." Susan's jaw tightened. David didn't move for a beat. Then he spoke, calm, almost bored, like he was trying not to show his hand. "Was she upset when she arrived?" Susan's eyes flashed at him, but she answered anyway. "Yes." I nodded once. "Then you already know something's wrong." The house behind them was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl because it means someone small is sitting very still. Susan's grip on the door didn't loosen. David's eyes flicked past her shoulder toward the hallway, then back to me. Another beat. Then he shifted, just enough to create space. "Come in," he said. Not warm, just letting me through. I stepped inside, and then I saw her. Cora was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup in front of her. Her shoulders were hunched. Her hands were wrapped around the cup like it was the only solid thing in the world. She looked small in a way that made something inside me go completely still. "Cora," I breathed. Her eyes lifted to me. She didn't run. She didn't smile. She just stared, like she was waiting to see if I was real. I crossed the room and knelt beside her. "Hi, baby," I said softly. I wrapped my arms around her. She didn't hug me back. She stayed stiff, arms at her sides, like she didn't trust the moment. My chest tightened. I pulled back just enough to see her face. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying the way kids usually cry. It was like she'd already cried and ran out of room for it. Then her voice came out small and broken. Grandma said you didn't want me. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe for a second. I looked up, briefly, toward Susan and David. They were watching from the doorway, guarded and silent like they were waiting for a verdict. Then I looked back at my daughter. Honey, I said, and my voice shook. She lied. Cora's lip trembled. She said you told them. She said you were tired of me. My eyes burned. I came home, I said, carefully, like my words were the only thing holding her together. I came home and you weren't there. I was looking forward to spending the whole day with you. I drove as fast as I could. Cora's eyes searched mine. You didn't tell them? She whispered. You didn't tell them to bring me here because you don't want me? Never, I said, and my voice broke on the word. Not in a million years. Her shoulders sagged a little. Then, slowly, her arms lifted and wrapped around me. Not tight, not instantly. Cautious, but real. I held her like the world had proven it couldn't be trusted. Behind us, I could feel Susan and David watching, still guarded, still quiet. Then David cleared his throat. We thought you didn't want her, Susan said stiffly. I didn't look up. I do. David's voice came lower, steadier. We don't approve of what Stephen is like. That made me look up. His eyes were serious, not soft, but sincere. And when we believed a child was being handed over like she was unwanted, he added, we were willing to take her, without hesitation. Susan nodded once, still rigid. We weren't going to let her bounce around. I absorbed that. Not trust, not relief, information. A crack in the wall, placed late, exactly where it belonged. I stood, keeping one hand on Cora's shoulder. I'm taking her, I said. Susan didn't argue. David didn't block the door. They watched us go. Cora held my hand so tightly in the car it hurt, and I let it hurt, because it meant she was there. I drove away knowing one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I didn't take Cora back to the house, not after what I'd seen in her room, not after what my mother had told her. I drove us straight to a hotel, beige walls, neutral carpet, the kind of place designed to be emotionally forgettable. Perfect. Cora climbed onto the bed with her shoes still on and stared at the TV without turning it on. I sat beside her and exhaled. Okay, I said softly. New plan. Cora looked at me, eyes wary. Are we safe? That question hit like a punch. I reached for her hand. Yes, I said. We're safe. Then I did what I do when everything is falling apart. I started handling it. I called work. Family emergency, I said to my charge nurse. I need time off. No one in a hospital asks for a full explanation when your voice sounds like that. Take what you need, she said. We'll cover. I hung up and looked at my daughter, and the mother bear part of me, quiet for too long under exhaustion and people-pleasing, stood up fully. Food first. Bath. Clean pajamas. Warm drink. Her favorite show. My hand on her back while she tried to fall asleep. I didn't unload my rage on her. I didn't hand her adult fear to carry. I just kept saying what mattered. You're with me. I've got you. No one gets to move you around. She fell asleep curled against my side like she was afraid I'd disappear. When she was breathing evenly, I checked my phone. Missed calls. So many. Mom. Dad. Allison. Texts too, angry, confused, demanding, like I owed them answers. I didn't respond. Instead, in the morning, I called a law firm and scheduled a meeting. The next day, I sat across from Mr. Brown in an office that smelled like coffee and polished wood. He had the calm face of a man who'd seen family chaos professionally and didn't flinch at it. I slid the folder across his desk, the documents I'd taken when I left. Mr. Brown flipped through them slowly. Then he looked up. "The house is legally yours," he said. My lungs loosened like they'd been tight for years. "You can absolutely evict them," he continued. "I'll send the letters and start the process." I nodded once. "Do it." Mr. Brown's pen moved across paper. "They'll be angry." I let out a dry little laugh. They were angry when they voted my daughter out. At least this time their anger comes with a stamp. 2 days later, Cora was back at school. Not magically fine, not instantly healed, but back in routine. And I was back at the hospital trying to work like my personal life wasn't a disaster. I was in the hallway near the nurse's station when I heard my name. Not a coworker voice, a demanding voice. I turned, and there they were, my mom and dad, in the hospital, waving papers, the eviction documents. My mom's face was red with fury. My dad looked like he'd been chewing on anger for 2 straight days. They marched up to the desk and started raising their voices. Patients looked over. Staff stiffened. Someone in security started paying attention. I stepped forward before it became a full scene. 5 minutes, I said, clipped. That's all you get. My mom hissed. "Oh, now you have limits." I led them to a side corridor near an empty consult room, close enough that staff could see me, far enough that my unit didn't have to watch this. My dad shoved the papers toward me. "Explain this." My mom's voice climbed. "How dare you? How dare you send lawyers after us?" My dad snapped. "You scammed us. You stole our house." I blinked slowly. "I stole it?" "Yes," my mom spat. "You used a loophole. You planned this. You betrayed your parents." I kept my voice flat, hospital calm. The kind of calm you use when someone is bleeding and you need your hands steady. "You begged me to do it," I said. My mom scoffed. "We never begged." "You did," I said. "You were about $68,000 in unsecured debt. You were roughly $19,400 behind on the mortgage and taxes. You couldn't refinance. Your credit was ruined." My dad's jaw tightened. "I put in about $24,000 of my own savings up front, remember?" I continued. "I took on a monthly payment of about $2,350 in my name. I put my credit and my future on the line." My mom's eyes flashed. "And you're throwing that in our faces." "No," I said. "I'm putting it back where it belongs." My dad stepped closer. "We're your parents." I looked at him and felt something settle into place. Clean. Final. "You stopped being my parents the moment you voted my daughter out," I said. My mom's voice rose higher. "We made the difficult decision for you." "You made it for yourselves," I said. "For Allison's studio. For your comfort. For control." My mom flinched like I'd said something obscene. "You dumped my child at Stevens," I said. "You told her I didn't want her." My dad's eyes flicked away for half a second. "Good. You don't get access to Cora," I said. "Not now. Not ever." My mom snarled. "You can't keep her from us." "I can," I said. "And I will." Their voices climbed again. Accusations, panic, rage. I took one step back and nodded to the security guard now hovering in the hallway. "I'm done," I said. "You've used your 5 minutes." My mom started to protest. Security stepped in. They were escorted out, still shouting, still trying to drag me back into the old role. But the role was gone. I watched them disappear through the doors, heart pounding, hands shaking, spine straight. Because power isn't loud. Power is leaving. And as I turned back toward my unit, one thought landed cleanly. They thought they could vote my daughter out. I decided to vote them out instead. A month later, my mom, my dad, and Allison had moved out. Not stormed out and came back, moved out. Actually gone. I took a new job at a clinic a town over, part-time, stable hours, no double shifts, the kind of schedule that fits motherhood. The house held too many memories, so I rented it out, about $2,850 a month, and used the income to live comfortably on part-time work and pay for occasional childcare when I needed it. Life also got easier for a very simple reason. My mom, my dad, and Allison weren't draining my finances anymore. I went completely no contact, no calls, no texts, no just checking in. I heard through relatives that they were in a 2-bedroom rental now, and Allison was still there too, freeloading, running her influencer hobby from her bedroom, living off their pension like it was a career plan. Cora recovered slowly, not in a straight line, but slowly. She started sleeping through the night again, started laughing without checking my face first, started trusting that home meant me. And the twist I didn't expect? I stayed in contact with Susan and David. They didn't excuse Stephen. They didn't defend him. They showed up for Cora, quietly, consistently. They visit every week now, and Cora actually enjoys it. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Did I steal from my parents? Was I right to kick them out and keep the property? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more. My 8-year-old daughter proudly gave my MIL her spelling bee certificate and said she wanted to show her first. My MIL replied, "You think you can buy my love with that?" Then she tore it into pieces and threw it in the trash. My older daughter got up and said this, and the whole room went silent. Christmas at my in-laws' house always feels like stepping into a place where everyone is pretending nothing is wrong. Too bright, too cheerful, too tightly wound. The kind of atmosphere where one wrong move might crack the whole night open. My 8-year-old daughter, Ella, stood close to me, holding her spelling bee certificate as if it were something precious she'd been saving for the right moment. And then, Ella stepped forward. She held her spelling bee certificate with both hands, gripping it so tightly the edges curled a little. Her cheeks were pink, not from the cold but from excitement. She had been waiting all week for this moment. "Grandma," she said, voice small but bright, "I wanted to show you this first." My mother-in-law Diane took the paper between 2 fingers, like she was accepting a parking citation. Her face didn't move at first. Just one slow inhale through her nose, one slow exhale out of her mouth. And then her lips tightened into that knife-thin line I've come to recognize as Diane is about to ruin the vibe for sport. "You think you can buy my love with that?" Ella blinked. I blinked. The room blinked. And then Diane tore the certificate clean in half, then in half again, and again, slow, deliberate, like she was doing origami with my daughter's confidence. She dropped the pieces straight into the trash can beside her chair without even looking at it, like the entire moment bored her. Silence detonated. I felt it in my teeth, in my spine, in the back of my skull. Ella just stared at the trash. 1 second confused. The next, her little face folded inward. Her mouth trembled. Her eyes went shiny with that stubborn blinking kids do when they're trying not to cry in public. The room froze. Not loudly, not dramatically. Worse, quietly. Like everyone had silently agreed to pretend nothing awful had just happened. Melissa, my sister-in-law, smoothed her dress and gave a small, satisfied smile, like this was the outcome she'd been hoping for. Bella, Melissa's daughter and Diane's favorite grandchild, watched with bright curiosity, almost pleased, as if Ella's humiliation kept the family hierarchy intact. Raymond, my father-in-law, stared down at his hands, shrinking into his chair like he was trying to disappear into the upholstery. Eric, my husband, stood stiff beside me, pale and stunned, completely frozen. And no one said a thing. Not one adult stepped in. Not one person asked Ella if she was okay. The silence dragged, thick and shameful, and then Hannah moved. Her chair scraped back sharply, the sound slicing through the room. My 11-year-old stood up, slow but steady, shoulders tight, eyes burning. She walked straight to Ella and put herself between her sister and the trash can. Her voice shook, but it carried. "Why would you do that? She's 8. Good grandmas don't do that." And just like that, the silence turned into something alive, heavy, cold, impossible to ignore. Diane's eyes went wide, like she genuinely could not comprehend being confronted by a child. "How dare you?" she snapped. But Hannah didn't flinch, not even a breath. "How dare you? You hurt my sister." You could practically hear jaws dropping. Someone gasped softly. Someone else looked anywhere except at us. Even the Christmas tree lights seemed to dim for dramatic effect. My husband still stood completely frozen beside me, mouth slightly open, eyes locked on the scene like he was watching a car crash in slow motion. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. And maybe that's when something inside me quietly shattered. I looked at Diane, who muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear, "Kids today are too full of themselves," as if she hadn't just emotionally body-slammed an 8-year-old. No apology, no hesitation, no shame. Nothing but that familiar superior squint. That was it. The point of no return. "We're leaving," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't hesitate. It was cold, flat, and final. Hannah reached for Ella's hand instantly, gripping it with a protectiveness that made my chest ache. Ella clung to her, head bowed, shoulders shaking just slightly. We grabbed our coats in absolute silence. No one tried to stop us. No one tried to explain. No one offered comfort. They just sat there like mannequins in festive sweaters, eyes darting, guilt simmering, but mouths shut tight. And maybe that was the worst part. Not just what Diane did, but that everyone watched a child get crushed and decided to do nothing. We stepped out onto the porch. The winter air hit my skin sharp and clean, like a slap back into reality. Behind us, the house glowed warm and bright, a pretty little snow globe full of things pretending not to be broken. I shut the door slowly, deliberately, like sealing off a crime scene. And as the latch clicked, one truth settled deep in my bones. This wasn't random. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the moment everything finally snapped open. And something told me the real explosion was still coming. If you'd asked me 5 years ago whether Diane would ever tear up one of my daughter's certificates, I probably would have laughed and said something naive like, "No way, she's just a little intense." Yeah. Turns out intense was the warm-up act. Because what happened on Christmas wasn't random. It was the grand finale of a routine Diane has been perfecting for years. A routine I kept trying not to see. Let me back up. When I first met Eric, I knew 2 things about him. He was kind in a way that felt rare. He apologized for things that didn't require apologies, like stepping too close to a lamp or breathing near his mother. I should have connected the dots sooner. The first real red flag came long before kids. I mentioned something about finishing top of my class in college, and Diane's reaction was so flat you could have used it as a level tool. "Oh," she said. "One of those high-achieving types." Not mean, not sarcastic, just judgment wrapped in a polite tone, like academic success was a moral flaw. At the time, I shrugged it off. People are allowed to have weird opinions. Then Bella was born, and suddenly Diane became a walking parade float of pride and praise. Anything Bella touched turned into a miracle. A wobbly drawing? Artistic! A half-finished worksheet? Brilliant effort! A participation ribbon? You should all be so jealous! Bella isn't a bad kid. Let me say that clearly. She's sweet in her own way, but she's not academically driven, and school isn't her strongest place. That's fine. Truly. Not every child needs to be a spelling champion. But Bella was Diane's everything. The perfect little princess who, in Diane's mind, needed constant protection from anything that might make her feel second best. Then Ella came along. Ella, who genuinely loves learning. Ella, who reads books for fun. Ella, who remembers things like she was born with a filing system in her brain. Ella, who brought home real achievements. Spelling certificates, reading awards, little notes from teachers saying, "She's doing so well." And every time Ella succeeded, Diane's face did this weird little twitch. A tight smile, a stiff nod, a quick subject change. Almost like she couldn't digest the fact that someone other than Bella had done something notable. Meanwhile, when Bella brought something to show, anything at all, Diane reacted like someone had handed her a Nobel Prize. At first, I tried to explain it away. Oh, she's just excited to be a grandma. Oh, she just expresses things differently. Oh, maybe she's tired. But Hannah, my observant, quiet Hannah, saw through it instantly. Grandma only likes when we show her stuff if it's small, she told me once. If it's something good, she gets weird. I remember staring at her, wanting to argue, but knowing she was right. And then came the moment when all the half-formed suspicions snapped together. It was a few months before Christmas. Ella had just won a class award, not a huge competition, just a genuine accomplishment she'd worked for. She brought it to show Diane during a visit. Diane glanced at it, forced a tiny smile, and pulled me aside later. You should tell her not to go around flaunting these things. It can hurt other kids' feelings. I blinked. What other kids? Diane's eyes flicked directly to Bella, then back to me. I mean, any child who doesn't have it as easy as she does, she snapped, suddenly irritated. And there it was, the truth she'd been dancing around. Diane interpreted Ella's achievements as attacks on Bella. Not bragging, not arrogance, not pride, just existing. Just being good at something. Just outshining Bella by accident. From that point forward, everything clicked. When Bella had a small moment and Ella had a bigger one, Diane got cold. When Ella brought home something impressive, Diane dismissed it as showing off. When Bella managed something small, Diane acted like she'd earned a scholarship to Harvard. It wasn't about humility. It wasn't about values. It was about hierarchy. And Ella was climbing too high for Diane's comfort. Hannah saw all of it. Before Ella even understood what was happening, Hannah had already stopped showing Diane her own school achievements. She doesn't like it, she said. She's nicer when I pretend I didn't do anything. That sentence broke me a little. And then, there's the money. Eric had been helping Diane and Melissa financially for years. Quietly, consistently, guiltily. It started with a temporary loan, then a bill here, a repair there, and eventually regular monthly transfers that Diane treated like a salary she'd earned simply by existing. Whenever I questioned it, Eric would fold inward. She raised us, he'd say. She struggled. She needs help. And maybe she did. But it didn't take long to notice that Diane talked about compassion like it was a one-way street pointing directly at her. And the more stable our household became, the more Diane looked at Ella's achievements not as something to be proud of, but as something to resent. She wasn't protecting Bella's feelings. She was protecting her own fantasy. Bella on top, always. Ella beneath her, always. So when Ella stepped forward on Christmas, thrilled, hopeful, proud, Diane didn't see a child trying to share a special moment. She saw a threat, and she did what she always does when she feels threatened. She cut the problem down to size, and Christmas was just the moment she stopped hiding it. Because the truth was, we were standing on a landmine for years. Diane just finally stepped on it hard enough for it to explode, and none of us had any idea how much bigger that explosion was going to get. By the time we got home from Diane's Christmas circus, I thought I was done feeling anything. I was wrong. Ella went straight to the couch without a word, still clutching the torn pieces of her spelling bee certificate like they were bits of her heart. Hannah sat down right next to her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, eyes fixed on the floor. She looked like a bodyguard who had just realized the person she was guarding needed protection from their own family. "I'll put on a movie," I heard myself say, because apparently my brain had switched into emergency mom mode. "Something cozy. Okay?" Ella nodded without looking up. Hannah gave me that brief, tight glance that said, "I see everything," and I'm trying not to cry in front of her. I turned on some animated thing none of us were really going to watch, then walked to the kitchen on legs that felt like they'd been hastily installed by a discount mechanic. My hands shook while I reached for the cocoa mix. It wasn't just nerves. It was rage. Thick, hot, crawling up my spine rage. I poured milk into a pot. The second the stove clicked on behind me, I felt Eric step into the doorway. "Megan," he started. And that was it. That was the spark. "She tore up her spelling bee certificate," I snapped, spinning around to face him. "In front of everyone. She humiliated her." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Someone needed to say the words out loud. Someone needed to actually look at this thing instead of shoving it into the Diane being Diane drawer. Eric flinched like I'd thrown something at him. "I know," he said softly. His face was pale, his eyes glassy. "I know. You just what?" I demanded. "You just stood there. You watched her tear it up like it was trash. Ella looked at you. I looked at you. And you did nothing." His shoulders sagged. He sank into a chair at the kitchen table like his knees had given out. "I froze," he whispered. "Like I always froze." The worst part? He wasn't being dramatic. He put his elbows on the table and rubbed his hands over his face. When he finally looked up, something was cracked open behind his eyes. "She used to do the same to me," he said. I leaned back against the counter, the spoon in my hand forgotten, cocoa bubbling too fast on the stove. "What do you mean?" I asked. I knew, but I needed him to say it. Needed him to hear himself say it. He gave a bitter half laugh. "You know how she always tells everyone I was so smart growing up," he said. "Funny how she leaves out the part where she hated it." He started talking, fast, like someone had turned a valve. "Anytime I used a big word, she'd say, 'Don't try to sound smarter than people.' If I got a good grade, she'd say, 'Stop bragging, you'll make your sister feel bad.' I brought home an award once, just a little academic thing. She rolled her eyes and told me to put it away before company came so I didn't show off." My throat tightened. "I thought it was discipline," he continued. "I thought she was keeping me grounded. I spent my entire childhood thinking I was the problem for being proud of myself." He stared down at his hands. "But tonight, when she did it to Ella, it was like watching my own childhood get replayed. Except this time it wasn't me. It was my kid." Something in his expression shifted. The guilt was still there, but it had teeth now. He stood up so fast his chair jolted backward. "I'm done," he said. "I'm not letting her do this again. Not to them." Before I could ask what done meant, he was already moving. Out of the kitchen, down the hall, into the small office we barely used except for taxes and stressing about bills once a month. I turned the stove off and followed. By the time I reached the doorway, Eric was already at his desk, laptop open, fingers flying. On the screen, his bank account, rows of transactions, a familiar name showing up over and over, transfers to Diane, payments to cover emergencies, money sent to help Melissa until things settled. All those times he'd said, "She just needs a little help right now." All those times I'd let it slide because I didn't want to be the bad guy. "I've been paying her to treat our kids like they're beneath her," he said quietly. He clicked on a recurring payment labeled something like Mom, Utilities. Cancel. Confirm. Another one. Mom. Credit card. Cancel. Confirm. "Eric," I whispered, my heart doing cartwheels. "Are you sure you want to do this right now?" He didn't even look at me. "I should have done it a long time ago," he said. "If she thinks she owns me because I help her, she's wrong. I'm not paying her to hurt our kid." Click. 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 Each one felt like cutting a cord I hadn't realized was wrapped around all our necks. I didn't stop him. I didn't try. And then it happened. His phone buzzed on the desk, screen lighting up with a name that made my stomach flip. Diane. He stared at it for a heartbeat. Then he picked it up and hit speaker. "What did you do?" she shrieked. No hello, no preamble. "My card just got declined at the store. Are you trying to embarrass me?" "I stopped paying your bills," Eric said calmly. You could almost hear her inhale. "What do you mean, you stopped?" she demanded. "You can't just stop. After everything I've done for you, you're really going to do this to your own mother because your precious little girl got her feelings hurt." I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. "She was proud," Eric said. "You tore up something she worked for, in front of everyone. You embarrassed her." "She needed a lesson," Diane snapped. "She struts around like she's better than Bella, and she is not. Someone has to keep her in check." My stomach dropped. There it was, out loud. No more pretending. Eric's jaw clenched. When he spoke again, his voice was low, deadly calm. "You don't get to hurt my daughter to protect someone else's feelings." "You're letting Megan turn you against your own blood!" Diane screamed. "You're choosing them over me!" He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just ended the call. Hung up. On his mother. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. I barely had time to exhale before the phone buzzed again. Eric checked the screen. "Melissa," he said, already tired. He answered and set it back on the desk. "What did you do to Mom?" Melissa snapped. "She's crying. You cut her off? Over what? Because Ella couldn't handle being told no?" "She wasn't told no," Eric said. "Mom tore up her certificate. She humiliated her." "Oh, please," Melissa groaned. "It's not that serious. Your kid embarrasses Bella all the time with that trophy stuff. She needed to learn she's not the star of this family." I felt my heart stop for a second. I heard my own voice, barely above a whisper. "Did she just say that?" Eric's hand tightened into a fist. "So you admit it," he said. "You think Ella should shrink so your kid doesn't feel insecure." "Well, yeah," Melissa shot back. "It's not fair when she acts like she's better than everyone. You let her show off and then Mom gets blamed for trying to keep some balance." There it was. No disguises, no sugarcoating, just raw, ugly truth. Eric's voice shook, but he didn't back down. "If you talk about my daughter like that again," he said, "we're done." "You're throwing away your family," Melissa screamed. "I'm protecting mine," he said, and he hung up. Again. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was both of us breathing like we'd just run a marathon through fire. Down the hall, the movie hummed faintly. Someone laughed on the TV. Ella didn't. Hannah stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. She'd heard enough. You could see it in her eyes. "Are we ever going back there?" she asked quietly. Eric looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time in years instead of seeing whatever Diane wanted him to see. "No," he said. "Not after this." Hannah nodded once, like a verdict had been handed down. Ella appeared behind her, eyes puffy, clutching the taped-together scraps of her certificate. "Why doesn't Grandma like when I do good things?" she asked. That single sentence hurt more than anything Diane had said all night. I crouched down in front of her. "Baby," I said, "some people feel small inside, and instead of fixing that, they hurt other people who shine. That's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. You're allowed to be proud of yourself." Eric knelt beside us, tears finally spilling over. He took both girls into his arms like he was hanging on to a life raft. "No one is ever going to tear up your achievements again," he said. "Not while I'm here. I promise." And for the first time that day, I believed him. What I didn't know yet was that the ripple from those 2 phone calls was about to hit Diane harder than she ever imagined. If I'd thought the Christmas meltdown and the 2 nuclear phone calls were the end of it, I was adorably naive. Like, believes the dryer eats socks, naive. Diane wasn't done. Of course she wasn't done. Women like Diane don't lick their wounds. They host a press conference. 2 days after we cut her off, I woke up to 9 messages from relatives I barely speak to. "Have you seen what your MIL posted? You okay? Wow. Nothing good ever starts with, 'Have you seen what she posted?'" I opened Facebook. There she was. Diane had written a full-blown manifesto, long enough to qualify as a college admission essay, accompanied by a picture of herself standing beside her Christmas tree, looking like the patron saint of suffering mothers. According to Diane, I was raising arrogant children who think trophies make them better than family. Ella had shoved her certificate in everyone's faces. And my personal favorite, Diane had gently corrected her, and that was what caused an explosive overreaction orchestrated by Megan. I actually snorted out loud. Ella couldn't shove anything in anyone's face if you paid her in unicorn stickers. There was no mention of tearing or trash cans, or the fact that the gentle correction was actually a complete humiliation. And then Melissa entered the battlefield. She commented under the post like she was Diane's personal hype woman. "Ella always acts superior. Some kids need to be humbled. Mom was just teaching her manners." I nearly dropped my phone. Some kids need to be humbled? I resisted the urge to write, "Yes, some adults need to be jailed." And then, because apparently she was committed to the role, Melissa posted a second comment implying Bella had been bullied by the constant showing off. Bullied. By an 8-year-old holding a certificate. I sat down on the edge of my bed, dizzy with a mixture of rage, disbelief, and that horrible secondhand embarrassment you get when someone publicly humiliates themselves with full confidence. Eric came in, hair still a mess from sleep. "You saw it?" "Oh, I saw it," I said. "I also saw Melissa auditioning for the role of Worst Human 2024. He took my phone, read in silence. His jaw tensed. His eyes hardened. And then he handed it back to me like it was covered in poison. "We're responding," he said. My stomach flipped. I wasn't sure if it was fear or adrenaline. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I mean, they're already making fools of themselves. They're lying about our kid," he said. "We're done letting them control the narrative." I nodded. He was right. I hated that he was right. But he was. We sat together on the couch, the same couch where Ella had cried 2 nights earlier, and wrote out a post. It was short, calm, factual. The opposite of Diane's essay-length tantrum. 2 days ago, Ella showed her grandmother a spelling bee certificate she was proud of. Her grandmother tore it into pieces and threw it in the trash. This wasn't the first time she dismissed or mocked our children's achievements. We're choosing to step back from that side of the family. We attached a photo of Ella's certificate taped back together, screenshots of Diane's texts. Knock her down a peg. Don't let her steal attention from Bella. She needs to stay humble for everyone's sake. We didn't add anything dramatic. We didn't accuse anyone of crimes. We let the truth speak for itself. And the truth? It's loud. Comments started pouring in like someone had opened a floodgate. Wait, she tore it up? Who does that to a child? I thought Ella was bragging. I feel awful now. This is so toxic. Someone I didn't even know wrote, I'm sorry. My grandfather used to do something similar. It stays with you. Then came the one that changed everything. She did the same to me when I won an award in high school. I never forgot it. A cousin of Eric's. Someone who had always stayed neutral. Suddenly, the entire comment section flipped. People deleted their earlier support for Diane. Someone asked Melissa if she was proud of defending a grown woman tearing up a child's certificate. Melissa did not respond. She didn't post for the rest of the day. Diane went silent, which was honestly terrifying. Like the quiet before a storm, or a lawsuit, or Diane showing up at my house with a megaphone. But instead, the phone rang. Not Diane. Not Melissa. Richard. Eric's uncle. The one who barely speaks, rarely visits, and has the emotional presence of a stone statue in a bank lobby. If he calls, something is happening. Eric answered on speaker. I saw the posts, Richard said. His voice was calm, steady, unsettling. And I talked to several people. Oh, Eric said, eyes widening. Okay. This has gone on long enough, Richard continued. Your mother has been taking money from all of us for years. My jaw dropped. All of us? Excuse me? Richard didn't even pause. She's not getting another dollar, he said. Not from me. Not from you. Not from anyone she's been leaning on. Before we could breathe, before either of us could process those words, he dropped the bomb. I already moved the money I was sending her every month into 2 education funds. One for Ella, one for Hannah. My mouth went dry. They'll each have a full start for college or whatever programs they want, he said. It's done. I had to sit down. My legs were not prepared for billionaire uncle energy, even if he wasn't technically a billionaire. Richard, Eric breathed. That's a lot. That's called accountability, Richard said. I'd rather invest in kids who work hard than in someone who tears up their achievements. And just like that, he hung up. Eric and I stared at each other, stunned into silence. Then Eric let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for a decade. Of course Diane found out. Of course she did. She started calling everyone in the family, shrieking that I had stolen her future, that Eric had abandoned his own mother, that Richard had lost his mind. This time, nobody defended her. Not one person. Melissa deactivated her Facebook account. Raymond reportedly told someone he was too old for this nonsense. And Diane? She went quiet again. Not peaceful quiet. Storm brewing quiet. But honestly, I didn't care. Because that night, Ella hung a new certificate on her bedroom wall. Not taped together, not torn, not waiting for approval that was never going to come. Hannah hugged her and said, See? This is how it's supposed to be. Eric stood in the doorway, eyes glassy but proud. I watched them and felt something strange settle in my chest. Not victory, not relief. Something steadier. A line drawn. A door shut. A cycle broken. Diane tried to make my daughter smaller. All she did was show us exactly how tall we could stand. So what do you think? Did we go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.